The door clicked shut behind him, a soft, final sound that echoed louder than it should have in the stillness of the apartment. Dawn crept through the curtains like an uninvited witness, exposing everything he wished to keep hidden. The scent of unfamiliar perfume clung stubbornly to his collar, sweet and dangerous, carrying the weight of a night that was never supposed to follow him home. For a brief, foolish second, he believed he had escaped the consequences. He loosened his tie, exhaled, and told himself this morning would be just another morning. The silence felt wrong, too clean, too deliberate. Normally, there would be the faint sound of movement, a cup placed on the counter, a question hanging in the air. Instead, the apartment looked staged, as if someone had carefully erased all signs of life. His shoes tapped against the floor as he stepped inside, and that's when he saw it, a single white envelope resting on the dining table. Perfectly centered, untouched, waiting. His pulse jumped, then settled again. An envelope meant nothing, a bill, a note, anything but what his conscience whispered. He turned away, trying to delay the moment, but the room seemed to pull him back toward the table. Each step felt heavier, as if the floor itself knew what he didn't want to face. He dropped his keys, the metallic clatter slicing through the quiet, and reached for the envelope. His name was written neatly on the front, calm handwriting, steady, without anger. That calm unsettled him more than rage ever could. As he tore it open, memories of the night before flashed through his mind in cruel fragments, laughter too loud, a touch that lingered too long, promises made without meaning. He had convinced himself it was harmless, temporary, forgettable. He had convinced himself his wife would never know. After all, she had been distant lately, lost in her own thoughts, her eyes carrying secrets he never bothered to ask about. He mistook her silence for ignorance, her composure for weakness. He pulled the papers halfway out and froze. The sharp edges of legal documents brushed his fingers, cold and precise. His breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a letter. This wasn't a warning. This was an ending, prepared with intention. His chest tightened as the date caught his eye. Today. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Today. The same day he had walked back in, believing he still controlled the story. The weight of it pressed down on him, and suddenly the apartment didn't feel empty at all. It felt full, of truth, of decisions already made, of a future that no longer included him in the way he had always assumed. He stood there, divorce papers trembling in his hands, realizing that while he had spent the night betraying his vows in the dark, she had been wide awake, choosing herself in the light. The papers slipped fully into his hands, heavier than their thin pages should have allowed, as if every word carried its own weight of judgment. He lowered himself into the nearest chair, his knees suddenly unreliable, and stared at the document like it might rearrange itself into something less final. The letters were sharp, official, merciless. His name, her name, dates, clauses, signatures waiting to happen. There was no anger in the language, no dramatic accusations, just certainty. That hurt more than any insult could have. His wedding ring felt tighter than ever, a dull band of metal mocking him with memories he could no longer outrun. He twisted it absently, as if he could rewind time by rubbing the skin raw beneath it. Images rushed in without permission. The day they moved into this apartment, laughing as they argued over where the sofa should go, the quiet mornings when she woke before him and left coffee on the stove, the way she used to look at him when she thought he wasn't watching. He wondered when that look had disappeared, and how he had managed not to notice. A sharp line in the document caught his eye, mentioning irreconcilable differences. The phrase felt like a lie wrapped in politeness. There had been nothing sudden about this. It was painfully clear now. Her recent silences, the way she stopped asking questions, the calm that replaced her concern, it wasn't indifference. It was resolution. While he had been convincing himself that everything was under control, she had been quietly dismantling a life that no longer protected her. His phone buzzed in his pocket. For a brief, irrational moment, he hoped it was her, calling to say this was all a misunderstanding. Instead, it was a reminder from work. The world kept moving, indifferent to the collapse unfolding in his chest. He laughed once, hollow and bitter, the sound foreign in his own ears. How absurd it was that schedules and meetings still mattered when his marriage had just been reduced to paperwork. He read the pages again, slower this time, and noticed something else. There were no demands for explanation, no emotional pleas hidden between the lines. She wasn't asking him to confess or apologize. She wasn't asking for closure. She had already found it. That realization stung deeper than the thought of losing the home, the routine, or even her presence. She had let go without needing anything from him. His hands began to shake, not from fear, but from regret that came too late to be useful. The night before replayed in brutal clarity, not as pleasure, but as stupidity. He saw it now for what it was, a reckless escape from a truth he didn't want to face. And while he had been chasing a moment of validation elsewhere, his wife had been choosing dignity, step by deliberate step. He pressed the papers to the table and bowed his head, the weight of his choices finally settling in. This wasn't a confrontation waiting to happen. It was a decision already made, a door already closed. And for the first time, he understood that the silence he feared wasn't empty. It was the sound of her walking away, long before he ever noticed. The sound of the door opening behind him was so quiet he almost imagined it, a soft click that sliced through the air with surgical precision. He didn't turn immediately. He already knew who it was. The presence filled the room, calm and steady, unlike the storm raging inside his chest. When he finally looked up, she stood there without hesitation, as if this moment had been rehearsed in her mind long before it reached reality. She looked different, not because of her clothes or her posture, but because something invisible had shifted. Her eyes were clear, unburdened, no longer searching his face for reassurance or truth. She wasn't angry, she wasn't cold, she was finished. That terrified him more than any raised voice ever could. He opened his mouth to speak, to explain, to confess, but the words tangled and collapsed before they reached his tongue. Explanations felt useless now, like trying to rebuild a house after it had already burned to the ground. "It's done," she said quietly, her voice steady, almost gentle. 2 words. No accusation, no drama, just a statement of fact. She placed her bag on the chair by the door, not to stay, but as a pause, one final courtesy before leaving for good. He noticed then how composed she was, how her hands didn't tremble, how her breathing remained even. This wasn't strength born in a moment, it was strength built over time, in silence, in pain, in acceptance. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor, the sound jarring in the still room. Regret flooded his face, raw and unfiltered. He wanted to tell her he never meant for it to go this far, that it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. But even as those thoughts formed, he realized how hollow they sounded. If it meant nothing, why had it cost him everything? His silence answered the question for him. She watched him without judgment, and that was the final blow. There was no satisfaction in her expression, no triumph. Only peace. She had already mourned this marriage while he was still living inside it, assuming it would always be there. The imbalance of that realization crushed him. He was grieving in real time what she had finished grieving weeks ago. She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. Each step felt deliberate, unhurried, as if she was walking toward a future she had already imagined. He took a step forward, then stopped, understanding at last that reaching for her now would only prove how late he was. Some moments didn't offer second chances. They only revealed the cost of missing the first one. As the door closed behind her, the apartment felt larger and emptier than ever before. He stood alone, surrounded by echoes of a life he thought was secure. In that silence, the truth settled fully in his chest. This wasn't the day he lost his marriage. It was the day he finally realized when he had lost it, and why this Rokovoy den would follow him for the rest of his life.